Welcome to another episode of Writing Expensive Words. Listen, according to askthepublic.com, writers all over the world are searching about how to sell their story ideas. But should you sell your story idea? Can you sell a story idea? Well, find out today on our episode of Writing Expensive Words. Woo! Okay, I hope you're doing well. I'm trying something new. I'm live on Instagram and on YouTube at the same time while recording my podcast. Uh, so if something goes wrong, then it goes wrong, and that's okay. So today I wanted to talk about developing a story idea and how to sell story ideas, all of these things that are constantly on our minds. So, if you have this question, can you sell a story idea? Then I have a great answer for you. Listen, this is a common question that new writers have. And if you've been thinking about this and it seems like the most important thing you could possibly do, then guess what? It's not your fault that you're so obsessed with story ideas because we have the big five publishers, we have television and film telling us that we need to sell story ideas, but it's not actually a thing you can do. You cannot copyright a story idea, which is one of the questions that people ask. So today we're going to go through 7 questions. The first one is, can you sell a story idea? And the answer is, if that's what you're trying to do, you're not focusing on the thing that you should be focusing on. And like I said, it's not your fault, but you have to think about it this way. What is a good story, right? Is it just the idea? Do people put out books that say a guy who floated up on a cloud and saw his secret Pegasus who was stalking him? I don't know. But so you have this concept of, hey, if you have a great idea, that's all you need. But the truth is, you cannot sell a story idea, you cannot copyright a story idea, and you cannot get readers to indulge in something that is simply a story idea. It has to have more, it has to actually have the story. So, if you have a good idea and you don't know how to implement everything that makes up an entire story, the reader, the watcher, whatever, the person consuming your story is going to feel super betrayed. Okay? So but it's not your fault. Like I said, there's so many people that are like, story ideas are the most important thing. There's this super weird movie on Amazon Prime, and it has the actress who plays Penny from The Big Bang Theory in it. And it's all about writers. And there's this one guy who constantly, like, his wife is a writer in the group, right? Writer. I'll use that term loosely in this case because she doesn't actually write things. But he's always like recording story ideas and he'll be like, Fernando is a good idea for a character name. What the heck? Like, what is that? That's not a thing. You have to have a finished story if you're going to tell it to someone. If you think that I'm making this up, I have a really weird challenge for you. Go to someone who is really patient with you and who cares about you and tell them one sentence, one half of the story. Remember, stories and scenes and all of those things are broken down into actions and reactions. So I dare you to tell them half of a story and just stop and see what happens. They're not going to like it. They're going to be like, okay, I know what the action is. This is what they're thinking in their brain, even though they don't understand probably the action reaction formula. But it's so intuitive that the brain is like, well, I have the action, but like, what's the reaction? So you need to make sure that you're doing more than just thinking about interesting ideas. And I saw someone posting on Reddit on the science fiction writers group subreddit, and they were like, "Oh, well, have you ever noticed that you come up with an idea and then someone else has the same idea?" Yeah, that happens all the time because there are no new ideas. I've talked about this a lot. But you know what? No one else can write your story the way you can. And even if there's a similar theme in the idea, the story is going to turn out totally differently. Totally different. So you need to make sure that you're not basing so much importance on the story idea to the point where you're like, "I can never write anything because I have no unique ideas." And I think that that is a symptom of this, virus, which is not your fault, it's not my fault, but we're trying to stop it right now. The virus of thinking that story ideas are the most important part of storytelling, which they're not. Actually, if you're a good storyteller, you can take any literally any story idea and make it into something interesting, like a guy making a cup of coffee. Could I write an interesting story around that? Heck yes, I could. And you can too if you make sure to open up your mind and think about this in a different way than the way that the entertainment industry has framed it. Okay, that's question number one. Question number two. What is a good story idea? And this question is really interesting to me. How can you tell if a story idea is good? Listen, I know it's scary to think further down the line, but you can do it. All right? So when you're trying to figure out if a story idea is good or not, you need to think ahead. You need to ask yourself these questions. Do I have a beginning? Do I have a middle? Do I have an ending? Do I have a character arc, right? Does the character change over the course of the story in accordance with the plot? If you can answer those questions, guess what? You have a good story idea. Woo! All right. And I understand that at that point you're nervous because you're like, I have a good story idea. Because what's happening is that you're going to plant a story seed and you're not exactly sure what kind of plant's going to grow out of it. But you don't need to be scared because if you can answer those four questions, you've got it. All right. Question number three. Which story idea fits best? Okay. The way to know which story idea will work for you uh, all the way through the novel is to think about different plot points. Okay, so if a story fits, you will naturally understand what things should happen next. So you ask yourself these questions. What will happen to the character? How do they deal with the different problems that the story idea brings up? Because if you have a story idea and you have a character, you are going to have problems. If you don't have any problems for them, you don't have a plot. You also need to think about how the character is going to deal with those problems. So, as you're asking yourself what problems are coming up, you can ask, how is the character going to deal with and face those problems? Okay. So, when you have a story idea that allows you to answer those questions, to think about the problems and how the problems are going to be solved, guess what? You have a story idea. You should celebrate. You have something that you can actually write, that you actually want to write. And I will just give you full on permission to go do this. Go buy yourself a notebook and write all your ideas about the story in it. And if you need a new pen, like, who am I to tell you that you shouldn't get one? Okay, we are on to question number four. How to copyright a story idea. All right, we talked about this a little bit, but I want to go more in depth because it is a very popular question. So, just so you guys know, there are writing school gurus out there who will tell you that the story idea is the most important thing and that you should protect it with your life. But the truth is that these gurus don't know what they're talking about because they haven't actually been able to write successful stories or replicate a one off success. So they're telling you to copyright a story idea, and they don't know that actually, guess what? You can't copyright a story idea. We talked about that, right? But you're going to hear other writers and you're going to hear writing gurus saying that you need to make sure to protect what's yours. Story ideas and concepts cannot be owned. They cannot be copyrighted. So otherwise though, right? I'm glad they're not copyrighted because we wouldn't have so many gender bent stories that are inspired by awesome nostalgia story ideas. Uh, so, we wouldn't have like a Belle and the Beast swap. We wouldn't be able to have 50 iterations of Cinderella. So, next time you're like, oh, I'm bummed I can't copyright that idea, You should be glad that no one has copyrighted ideas because then there wouldn't be any ideas left to continue with. Okay, question number 5. Can't think of a story idea. Some of these questions are not grammatically correct, but hey, I get it. You're just like typing it in. You want Google to do all the work for you. No worries. Okay, so if you can't think of a story idea, the idea is important, but the best types of stories are well thought out all of the way through. For example, can you think of a story about arrows and evil governments and the evil government making children kill each other? Yes, The Hunger Games, right? And so Collins based a lot of her story on her dad's experience of serving in Vietnam. So when you're like, I can't think of a story idea, just try to think about what things in your life that you can use to transform into a complete story. And if you don't like The Hunger Games, I'm sad. I'm sad for you because it's so good. Even though Katniss is a very unlikable character, and I've talked about that on this podcast a lot. But even though she's unlikable, you still like her, right? Because why? Why do you like her? Because everyone else likes her, especially Peeta, who's like the most moral character in the entire series. He is in love with her. So you're like, well, if he's in love with her, I guess she must be okay. Also, she sacrifices herself for Prim. So that's a pretty big deal. Okay, question number 6. Let's see. 6. 6. Uh, how to come up with story idea. Listen, I get a lot of story ideas just from living. The other day, I got one about riding in a car with a ghost because I was thinking about what it would be like if someone from the past suddenly showed up and I let them choose the songs on my radio. I'm not making this stuff up. I made my son wait to go into GameStop because I was writing down the story idea, which I definitely like sat there for like 2 minutes and fleshed it out more thoroughly. But so I want to know what things from your life, where do you get your story ideas from? Comment below and let me and the other writers following this thread know where you get your story ideas. Okay, we're ready for the last question of today's episode. How to develop story idea. So that's actually the best question that we've looked at so far, and I'm so excited that people are asking this question because you want to make sure that whatever story you're putting a ton of effort and time into, right? Because you're not just sitting there and writing a novel in a day, that you fully develop it and you want to make sure that you do it justice. So you can definitely do this. And I actually have a free way to get you started. If you go to literarysymmetry.com/free, you can get the same worksheets that I use to plan out my novels and that I give my clients to help them plan out their novels. This system has worked for every single person that I've worked with. So make sure that you go get this free resource right now. It is awesome. I'm telling you, like, I always have like a stack of the worksheets sitting here for when I'm working on something. And I want you to know that you might have a story idea and you're like, Kristen, this story idea is so good. You're not even going to believe how good it is. And what I would challenge you to do is actually develop it. But I also want to point out that just because this is a really good story idea doesn't mean it's your best story idea. And I guarantee you that your best story idea is yet to come. So remember, it is never too late to write the story of your heart. Uh, you know, don't follow twice if you want more writing advice, and happy writing. I'm trying to end this on Instagram. It's not working. Oh, I didn't end it on here. This is what happens when you try to do too many things at once. All right, so if you're still watching on YouTube, you're awesome. I love you. Go write your story. You've got this.